Hi everybody, here's Ned Coke. This is the second video for the third week of the course, this week here of Module 3. I already have seen some of the commentaries that have been posted. And so for this week, by 1 p.m. on Friday, the commentary is due. See my comments on the previous video, everybody. And for next week, there is the individual assignment, the commentary by 1 p.m. on Friday. And I also expect sometime during this week, I expect each team leader to post on the Module 4 discussion board their project file and the data set with a description of the variables, as you see in the course website for the sample data sets for the other analysis. I strongly recommend, based on the commentaries, I have a feeling that it would help you a lot if you were to review all of those analysis, particularly this one here, improving satisfaction with car part delivery. So take a look at this video. But generally speaking, all of them would be useful for you to view. And also on the textbook, each one of those cases are described there. So this is for this week and next week. I wanted to comment on something that is related to data visualization and is somewhat related to what I discussed in the previous class. And I will use this graph here, which is the stock price for Apple since inception of the company or the company becoming publicly traded up to now. And there is a clear visual distortion here, which I would exemplify by telling you that this gap here, this difference from this bottom to the top here, is in percentage terms not even 50%. Whereas the gap around here, this area here, is 5 times, so it's 500%. So, and let me illustrate this. So here, the stock price is around $3. Here's 22, so about 7 times. So actually more than 500, 700%, about 7 times. So if you were to invest here and sell here, you would have made a 7-time return on your investment. Whereas here, so you can see close to 200, and here's 275, so it's not even 50%. So it's more like 20-30%. So that's interesting, and it's a visual distortion, it's a visual illusion, because the gap here is indeed bigger in absolute terms, but in percentage terms, it's nowhere near what you have here. So this is a visual distortion that sometimes surprises people and make them make incorrect assumptions, and it's related to visual data visualization, which is a topic related to data analytics. So it's related to this class. Now, what this does not distort, what is not a distortion, what is not just an impression, is that there is an enormous gain from the beginning here of inception and here. And this is due to something called compounding. So I told you, I think, in the previous video that the rate of return historically, approximately, of the S&P 500, the market, many people refer to the S&P 500 as the market, as the US market. So the rate of return there is about 7.2%. So if you were to invest $10,000, you would have, in year 1, you would have at year 10 double that amount. And at year 20, you would have double what you had in year 10. So that is the interesting thing about compounding. So at a rate of return of 7.2% per year, you would have your initial investment would double in 10 years, and then it would double again in another 10 years. The reason for this is that the 7.2 applies to the initial amount, and then you have a higher amount and the 7.2 applies to that, and so on. So this is sometimes what people refer to as the miracle of compounding. Apple is quite unique, particularly in this period here that goes, say, from early 2000s to now, in that it has compounded way more than the market. So, but let me show you one interesting thing here. So 10,000 invested early on. After 20 years, you have 40,000. Now, let's say you actively invest instead of just putting the money in the in a fund that tracks the S&P 500, like the VOO or the SPY. You were to actively invest or buy and sell, and that would allow you to obtain a rate of return of 10%. So here at market, 7.2%, you go from 10,000 to 40,000 in 20 years. If you were to get 10%, you would go from around 10,000 to 67,000. So it's a big difference. Now let's say that you would start with 10,000 and every year you would contribute another 10,000, which is more like a 401k approach. So then you would go, so initially you would have like your initial 10,000 plus 10,000, that would go to $500,000 in 20 years. If you leave that money there for 40 years, so let's say you started contributing at age 30, and you wait until age 40 to use that money. You leave the money invested. You can actually do that in a 401k. You would have $4.8 million with a rate of return of 10%. If it is more like a market return, then you would have $2 million. Many people would consider retiring after 30 years, so that would be $1 million. In today's money, if you want to consider inflation, what you would do is you would subtract from this number the rate of inflation. So at today's number, let's say it's 2%, which is the target by the Federal Reserve. Today is more like 3%, but let's say it's 2%. So that would be this number minus 2. So that would be 5.2%. So in today's dollars, you would have, after 30 years, 733,000. So considering inflation. This is something that sometimes you have to do in your analysis with WarpLS or any other tool, to do some simulations with Excel to further illustrate some ideas about the analysis that are not really related to the type of analysis that you do with WarpLS, where you have p-values, statistical significant assessment, and other factors. So that's what I had for today. Thank you for watching.